ใจเราต่างผูกพันสถาบันที่เรารักและภักดีเลือดเราสีบลูไม่มีวันจางสบตาก็รู้เราต่างนั้นคือน้องพี่อยู่ใต้น้ำพระราชทานพวกเรานั้นมีศักดิ์ศรีต้องทำความดีทดแทนคุณแผ่นดินไทยจะก้าวเดินไปด้วยใจองอาจตามรอยพระบาทของพ่อไม่ย่อท้อไม่หวั่นไหวจะขอเป็นคนดีเป็นลูกที่ดีของพ่อศักดิ์ศรีของมอจะขอเธอทูลตลอดไปยึดมั่นคุณธรรมตราบที่ยังมีลมหายใจจดจำไว้ว่าความดีคือศักดิ์ศรีของความเป็นคนจะก้าวเดินไปด้วยใจองอาจตามรอยพระบาทของพ่อไม่ย่อท้อไม่หวั่นไหวจะขอเป็นคนดีเป็นลูกที่ดีของพ่อศักดิ์ศรีของมอจะขอเธอทูลตลอดไปยึดมั่นคุณธรรมตราบที่ยังมีลมหายใจจดจำไว้ว่าความดีคือศักดิ์ศรีของความเป็นคนไม่มีที่ไหนที่เราภาคภูมิใจกว่านี้เมื่อได้อยู่ใต้บารมีสมเด็จพระราชบิดา
จะขอเธอทูลนามพระราชทานตราบนานแสนนานจนกว่าสิ้นดินฟ้าสิ้นลมหายใจ
จาก50 ปีที่ภาคภูมิใจจะก้าวต่อไปสู่วันข้างหน้าด้วยความรักความศรัทธาไม่เคยเสื่อมคลายจะกอดความดีเอาไว้ในดวงใจทุกวินาทีจะกุมแม่กำศักดิ์ศรีไว้กับตัวทุกลมหายใจสีตรังยังคงเบ่งบาน
ปณิธานไม่เคยเปลี่ยนไป
สีบลูจะอยู่คู่แผ่นดินไทยชั่วกาลนานนี่คือแค่รู้แห่ งความรักความสามัคคี
แค่มองตาก็เหมือนน้องพี่
ที่มีรักและความผูกพัน จากไปที่ไหนยังไม่ลืมไม่เลือนว่าเรานั้นพี่น้องกัน มันคงรักสถาบันเรื่อยไป จาก50 ปีที่ภาคภูมิใจ จะก้าวต่อไปสู่วันข้างหน้า ด้วยความรักความศรัทธาไม่เคยเสื่อมคลายจะกอดความดีเอาไว้ในดวงใจทุกวินาที
จะกุมมือกันสักสีไว้กับตัวทุกลมหายใจ
สีตรังยังคงเบ่งบานปณิธานไม่เคยเปลี่ยนไป สีบลูจะอยู่คู่แผ่นดินไทยชั่วกาลนานจะกอดความดีเอาไว้ในดวงใจทุกวินาทีจะกุมมือกำสักสีไว้กับตัวทุกลมหายใจ สีตรังยังคงเบ่งบานปณิธานไม่เคยเปลี่ยนไป สีบลูจะอยู่คู่แผ่นดินไทยชั่วกาลนานเถิดน้ำพระราชทานเอาไว้ในใจนิรันดร์
Half of a century ago, Prince of Songkhla University has been established during a challenging time for Thailand and mankind. While the world community is heading towards sustainable development in order to find solutions to the continuing problems of our time. Collaboration between ASEAN members has just started. Thailand is still reforming its economic structure on a foundation of innovation, technology and creativity. In accordance with our national strategy, the southern region of Thailand has been designated to be a base of green economy and a global tourist destination. These are the missions of Prince of Songkhla University, the first university of the South, one of Thailand's research universities, and an internationally recognized source of higher education. Prince of Songkhla University, one of the 5 leading higher education institutions of Thailand and a high-ranking university in Asia. With focus on an intensive promotion of research and development along with graduate studies in order to create new practical knowledge for the public, including innovations for enhanced quality of life, economy and environment. The locations of our 5 campuses are strategically placed on the Thai Peninsula, the centre of ASEAN. Rich in various resources, cultures, wisdom and economic activities. Well equipped to identify and manage the serious issues that severely impact the quality of life, society, economy and the environment today. These issues pose an endless challenge to the researchers of Prince of Songkla University. Prince of Songkla University supports its researchers by providing assistance to the setup of research networks on several levels. Prince of Songkla University has supported 8 research institutes to focus on industrial economics, medical science and public health, natural resources and environment, social and cultural matters. In addition, 3 more research institutes are planned in order to support future economic development. We aim to be the leader of research in fields related to the potential of the southern region in order to create stable, wealthy and sustainable development by researching to increase value of resources on both global and local levels. At the same time, we are researching answers to climate change related issues. We develop technologies for the future. Innovations for energy. Knowledge-based enhancements to food security. Medical innovations to better the lives of people. All are supported by organizations that provide essential assistance throughout research process. Local economic growth is sustainably supported based on innovation and creativity. We create a mechanism of collaboration with the private sector to support the creation of innovations and products, as well as the sharing of knowledge with several sectors through various channels. The Modern Scientific Equipment Centre, nearly 300 laboratories of universal standard, high-performance information technology and communication infrastructure. Prince of Songkla University also serves public benefit by seeking for solutions, improving the society and culture with knowledge. Whilst also transferring knowledge to people through various procedures and channels. All 5 campuses of Prince of Songkla University aim for creating a productive environment for researchers to facilitate their pursuit of knowledge and lifestyle. Our green campuses are surrounded by nature, convenience and safety, located among popular tourist attractions and modern transportation networks that provide easy connection to all other regions of the country. Several researchers of Prince of Songkla University have been recognized nationally and internationally for their outstanding research achievements. To face the challenges of modern times, our researchers are constantly searching for knowledge, creating innovations as they have been doing for decades. With a soul that is for the benefit of mankind, as advised by His Royal Highness Prince Mahidol Adulyadej, the Prince Father. As a research university that creates innovations and social improvements, Prince of Songkla University will continue this mission in order to provide better quality to the public today and in the future.
สำนักการศึกษาและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้ Education and Innovative Learning Academy หรือ ELA ตั้งอยู่ชั้น 9 อาคารศูนย์ทรัพยากรการเรียนรู้มหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์วิทยาเขตหาดใหญ่ขับเคลื่อนนโยบายด้านการศึกษาสู่การปฏิบัติให้บริการและสนับสนุนการพัฒนาอาจารย์และนักศึกษาด้านการศึกษาและการเรียนรู้ให้บริการและพัฒนาเทคโนโลยีสื่อการเรียนรู้เพื่อสนับสนุนการศึกษาตลอดชีวิตสำนักการศึกษาและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้ทำงานภายใต้การกำกับดูแลของรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายวิชาการควบคู่กับผู้ช่วยอธิการบดีฝ่ายต่างๆด้วยค่านิยมหลักขององค์กร E efficiency I integrity L lifelong learning A agility ฝ่ายส่งเสริมและพัฒนาหลักสูตรพัฒนาปรับปรุงหลักสูตรรูปแบบต่างๆที่ตอบสนองความต้องการของสังคมและการเรียนรู้ตลอดชีวิตตามนโยบายของมหาวิทยาลัยเช่นสหกิจศึกษาหลักสูตรบูรณาการการจัดการเรียนแบบ Non-degree เพื่อ Upskill and Reskill รวมถึงกำกับและตรวจสอบหลักสูตรให้เป็นไปตามเกณฑ์มาตรฐานการศึกษาฝ่ายเทคโนโลยีและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้ผลิตและพัฒนาสื่อการสอนโครงการ My School at PSU การสอนออนไลน์ PSU MOOC LMS และการสอบออนไลน์ e-testing PSU English Test วารสารวิชาการสารสนเทศทางการศึกษาการประชาสัมพันธ์ระบบพัฒนาสมรรถนะในการจัดการเรียนรู้ของอาจารย์ PSU TPSF ฝ่ายทะเบียนและประมวลผลให้บริการตั้งแต่การรายงานตัวนักศึกษาลงทะเบียนเรียนแจ้งผลการศึกษาจนกระทั่งถึงการเสนอขออนุมัติปริญญาและพิธีพระราชทานปริญญาบัตรรวมไปถึงการออกเอกสารสำคัญทางการศึกษาต่างๆฝ่ายบริหารและการจัดการรับผิดชอบงานเลขานุการการประชุมงานธุรการงานบุคคลนโยบายและแผนประกันคุณภาพรวมถึงการให้บริการห้องประชุมและอาคารเรียนรวมบริการสนับสนุนและขับเคลื่อนเพื่อพัฒนาคุณภาพการศึกษาเทคโนโลยีและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้
เ
Half of a century ago, Prince of Songkla University has been established during a challenging time for Thailand and mankind. While the world community is heading towards sustainable development in order to find solutions to the continuing problems of our time. Collaboration between ASEAN members has just started. Thailand is still reforming its economic structure on a foundation of innovation, technology and creativity. In accordance with our national strategy, the southern region of Thailand has been designated to be a base of green economy and a global tourist destination. These are the missions of Prince of Songkla University, the first university of the South, one of Thailand's research universities, and an internationally recognized source of higher education. Prince of Songkla University, one of the 5 leading higher education institutions of Thailand and a high-ranking university in Asia. With focus on an intensive promotion of research and development along with graduate studies in order to create new practical knowledge for the public, including innovations for enhanced quality of life, economy and environment. The locations of our 5 campuses are strategically placed on the Thai Peninsula, the centre of ASEAN. Rich in various resources, cultures, wisdom and economic activities. Well equipped to identify and manage the serious issues that severely impact the quality of life, society, economy and the environment today. These issues pose an endless challenge to the researchers of Prince of Songkla University. Prince of Songkla University supports its researchers by providing assistance to the setup of research networks on several levels. Prince of Songkla University has supported 8 research institutes to focus on industrial economics, medical science and public health, natural resources and environment, social and cultural matters. In addition, 3 more research institutes are planned in order to support future economic development. We aim to be the leader of research in fields related to the potential of the southern region in order to create stable, wealthy and sustainable development by researching to increase value of resources on both global and local levels. At the same time, we are researching answers to climate change related issues. We develop technologies for the future. Innovations for energy. Knowledge-based enhancements to food security. Medical innovations to better the lives of people. All are supported by organizations that provide essential assistance throughout research process. Local economic growth is sustainably supported based on innovation and creativity. We create a mechanism of collaboration with the private sector to support the creation of innovations and products, as well as the sharing of knowledge with several sectors through various channels. The Modern Scientific Equipment Centre. Nearly 300 laboratories of universal standard. High-performance information technology and communication infrastructure. Prince of Songkla University also serves public benefit by seeking for solutions, improving the society and culture with knowledge. Whilst also transferring knowledge to people through various procedures and channels. All 5 campuses of Prince of Songkla University aim for creating a productive environment for researchers to facilitate their pursuit of knowledge and lifestyle. Our green campuses are surrounded by nature, convenience and safety, located among popular tourist attractions and modern transportation networks that provide easy connection to all other regions of the country. Several researchers of Prince of Songkla University have been recognized nationally and internationally for their outstanding research achievements. To face the challenges of modern times, our researchers are constantly searching for knowledge, creating innovations as they have been doing for decades. With a soul that is for the benefit of mankind, as advised by His Royal Highness Prince Mahidol Adulyadej, the Prince Father. As a research university that creates innovations and social improvements, Prince of Songkla University will continue this mission in order to provide better quality to the public today and in the future.
สำนักการศึกษาและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้ Education and Innovative Learning Academy หรือ ELA ตั้งอยู่ชั้น 9 อาคารศูนย์ทรัพยากรการเรียนรู้มหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์วิทยาเขตหาดใหญ่ขับเคลื่อนนโยบายด้านการศึกษาสู่การปฏิบัติให้บริการและสนับสนุนการพัฒนาอาจารย์และนักศึกษาด้านการศึกษาและการเรียนรู้ให้บริการและพัฒนาเทคโนโลยีสื่อการเรียนรู้เพื่อสนับสนุนการศึกษาตลอดชีวิตสำนักการศึกษาและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้ทำงานภายใต้การกำกับดูแลของรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายวิชาการควบคู่กับผู้ช่วยอธิการบดีฝ่ายต่างๆด้วยค่านิยมหลักขององค์กร E efficiency I integrity L lifelong learning A agility ฝ่ายส่งเสริมและพัฒนาหลักสูตรพัฒนาปรับปรุงหลักสูตรรูปแบบต่างๆที่ตอบสนองความต้องการของสังคมและการเรียนรู้ตลอดชีวิตตามนโยบายของมหาวิทยาลัยเช่นสหกิจศึกษาหลักสูตรบูรณาการการจัดการเรียนแบบ Non-Degree เพื่อ Upskill and Reskill รวมถึงกำกับและตรวจสอบหลักสูตรให้เป็นไปตามเกณฑ์มาตรฐานการศึกษาฝ่ายเทคโนโลยีและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้ผลิตและพัฒนาสื่อการสอนโครงการ My School at PSU การสอนออนไลน์ PSU MOOC LMS และการสอบออนไลน์ e-testing PSU English Test วารสารวิชาการสารสนเทศทางการศึกษาการประชาสัมพันธ์ ระบบพัฒนาสมรรถนะในการจัดการเรียนรู้ของอาจารย์ PSU TPSF ฝ่ายทะเบียนและประมวลผลให้บริการตั้งแต่การรายงานตัวนักศึกษาลงทะเบียนเรียนแจ้งผลการศึกษาจนกระทั่งถึงการเสนอขออนุมัติปริญญาและพิธีพระราชทานปริญญาบัตรรวมไปถึงการออกเอกสารสำคัญทางการศึกษาต่างๆฝ่ายบริหารและการจัดการรับผิดชอบงานเลขานุการการประชุมงานธุรการงานบุคคลนโยบายและแผนประกันคุณภาพรวมถึงการให้บริการห้องประชุมและอาคารเรียนรวมบริการสนับสนุนและขับเคลื่อนเพื่อพัฒนาคุณภาพการศึกษาเทคโนโลยีและนวัตกรรมการเรียนรู้
สวัสดีค่ะขอต้อนรับทุกท่านสู่งานประชุมวิชาการ The 9th PSU Education Conference 2020 ในรูปแบบออนไลน์ภายใต้ชื่อหัวข้อ A Better Change in Higher Education for Future Economy โดยวันนี้ก็เป็นงานประชุมวิชาการในวันที่ 2 แล้วนะคะ
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 9th PSU Education Conference 2020, A Better Change in Higher Education for Future Economy. We are now on the second and final day of the conference.
ดิฉันผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.พิมพ์ชนกบัวเพชรสังกัดคณะวิทยาศาสตร์มหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์ค่ะ
และกระผม ดร.ศิรวิทย์ อิทธิโสพลพิสาร สังกัดคณะวิทยาศาสตร์เช่นเดียวกันครับ
My name is พิมพ์ชนกบัวเพชร
And my name is ศิรวิทย์ อิทธิโสพลพิสาร We are both from the Faculty of Science, Prince of Songkhla University.
วันนี้เราก็ยังคงอยู่ที่เวทีกลางณห้องสตูดิโอชั้น 8 อาคารศูนย์ทรัพยากรการเรียนรู้มหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์วิทยาเขตหาดใหญ่ค่ะ
We are now broadcasting live from the studio room on the 8th floor of the Learning and Resource Center building, Prince of Songkhla University, หาดใหญ่ campus.
ขอเรียนให้ทุกท่านที่รับชมไลฟ์อยู่ทราบว่าความพิเศษของวันนี้คือเรามีบทพิธีกรในรูปแบบ 2 ภาษานะคะเนื่องจากเรามีวิทยากรผู้ทรงคุณวุฒิจากต่างประเทศได้ให้เกียรติมาบรรยายในเช้าวันนี้ด้วยค่ะขออนุญาตเริ่มช่วงเช้าของเราด้วยการเริ่มแจ้งกำหนดการก่อนนะคะในเวลา 9 นาฬิกาถึง 9 นาฬิกา 45 นาทีนะคะจะเป็นการบรรยายพิเศษในหัวข้อ Where do we go from here? The future of higher education in a post-pandemic world โดย Professor John Unsworth จาก Northumbria University และในเวลา 9 นาฬิกา 45 นาทีถึง 10 นาฬิกานะคะจะเป็นการประกาศผลการประกวดผลงานและหลังจากนั้นก็จะเป็นการกล่าวปิดงานโดยรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายวิชาการค่ะ
So before we begin with our morning session, let's start by informing you of the today's program. So from 9 a.m. to 9:45 a.m., we have a keynote lecture entitled Where do we go from here? The Future of Higher Education in a Post-Pandemic World by Professor John Unsworth from Northumbria University. Then from 9:45 to 10 a.m. we have the awards announcement followed by the closing ceremony by the Vice President for Academic Affairs.
ในการนี้การบรรยายพิเศษในช่วงแรกจะเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะและหลังจากนั้นในการประกาศรางวัลและพิธีปิดจะเป็นภาษาไทยค่ะ
May I remind you that the keynote lecture today will be conducted fully in English, and after that we will switch back to the Thai language for the awards ceremony.
เรายังมีช่องทางการรับชมผ่านทาง Facebook Page ของ PSU Education Conference และ PSU Connect รวมถึง YouTube Channel ของ PSU Connect ด้วยนะคะ
So today's events are also broadcast via the Facebook page of the PSU Educational Conference and the PSU Connect, as well as the YouTube channel of PSU Connect.
ขณะนี้ได้เวลานำทุกท่านเข้าสู่บรรยากาศการบรรยายพิเศษแล้วนะคะในการนี้ขออนุญาตแขกผู้มีเกียรติทุกท่านดำเนินรายการเป็นภาษาอังกฤษค่ะ
Now it's time that we lead you to the special keynote lecture. The topic of today's lecture is Where do we go from here? The future of higher education in a post-pandemic world.
This lecture will be given by the renowned expert Professor John Unsworth, chairperson of the Queen Nursing Institute and Professor of Nursing at Northumbria University, United Kingdom. Questions from the audiences are very welcome. Please leave your question in the comment section and we will get back to them right after the talk.
Professor Unsworth obtained a doctoral degree from Robert Gordon University, Scotland, where he also earned a bachelor degree in nursing earlier on. He also obtained a Master of Science and a Master of Laws from Northumbria University. He completed his specialist practitioner qualification in district nursing in 1997. And since then, he has worked in a variety of roles, including district nursing, as a specialist nurse and nurse consultant. He has worked in higher education since 2007 and has held posts at the Higher Education Academy, University of Sunderland, and at Northumbria University. His research relates to patient safety and workforce development around competence. He has background in primary and community care, having been a nurse director in a geographically large primary care trust in England, Until 2018, Professor Unsworth was board nurse at the NHS Northumberland Clinical Commissioning Group. During the pandemic, he has worked for NHS Test and Trace and was a clinical contact caseworker. He is now involved in the COVID-19 vaccine delivery in primary care. Professor Unsworth has also worked in consultancy and in a number of specialist nursing roles over the past 30 years. In 2013, he was made a National Teaching Fellow in recognition of his work around simulation education and student assessment. He became a Principal Fellow of the Higher Education Academy in 2016. In addition, he has worked internationally to develop practice and higher education teachers in Thailand, China, Hungary, Ghana, Vietnam, Bahrain, Ukraine, and in Grenada, West Indies. Professor Unsworth is a 2020 Global Nursing Leadership Institute Scholar with the International Council of Nurses and has a leading role in influencing UK policy as chairperson of the Queen's Nursing Institute. He is currently a Professor of Nursing at Northumbria University at Newcastle upon Tyne. It is such an honor to welcome you, Professor.
And thank you so much for joining us today. You now have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to join you, and thank you very much for such a warm welcome. I'm going to share my screen with you now in order to start the presentation. So you should now be able to see the first slide in the presentation. Okay, so just move forward. The presentation this morning is going to be given to you using the platform called Zeetings at www.zeetings.com/JohnTSpace. If people would like to log in, there are some interactive elements, some quiz questions, etc., that we'll do during the presentation, and you will be able to respond to them. So you if you can log in using another device, a mobile phone or a tablet device, then please do so, or open another browser on your computer if you're working on a computer watching this presentation. Okay, firstly, just a little bit of background information. As you'll appreciate, given that there's a 6-hour time difference, I'm currently in the UK, and it's the middle of the night here. And normally my little 7-month-old puppy would be in daycare while I was at work, but he isn't. He's here. Currently asleep on the floor, thank goodness. But just to warn you that in the middle of the presentation, he may climb up onto my knee, and indeed he may start licking my face. So please just forgive me if that occurs. I will keep going. I'm quite used to it now. Okay, so let's get into the main part of the presentation. So I want to start by looking at where we currently are in relation to the pandemic and what I think will happen ultimately when the pandemic starts to subside. So the SARS-CoV-2, which is a COVID-19 virus, is likely to become endemic. It's likely to become an endemic infection. That means that there will always be a degree of infection in most countries around the world. And it will be in the background, very similar to flu. So we will suffer spikes in infection in winter. This is a respiratory virus, so very similar to influenza. We will see rising cases in the winter. It's likely to take 2 to 3 years before the majority of the population around the world is fully vaccinated. Now that will impact on our ability to travel. That will also impact on the suppression of the virus and possible mutant strains of the virus. It's likely we will need to develop annual booster vaccinations to cope with viral mutations. Viruses as microorganisms have a will to survive and will do what's called vaccine escape. So they will mutate in order to be able to continue to infect their hosts. And we will have increased infection vigilance amongst the population. Now, this isn't really going to be anything new to countries in Asia who have seen things like SARS, etc., and they have already become much more vigilant in relation to respiratory infections. And the culture is often mask wearing if they had a cold or influenza to prevent infection of other people. But you're likely to see that in Europe and in North America, more people wearing masks, increased hand washing. In fact, there is some concern about whether we could end up becoming more susceptible to microorganisms as a result of never having met any microorganisms. I think that's what the future holds. So what's the impact of the pandemic on Thailand? So you will be acutely aware that the Thai economy, in the same way as economies across the world, have shrunk quite substantially because of the pandemic as a result of lockdowns and loss of tourism, trade, etc. So the Thai economy has shrunk by some 5% in 2020. It's had a major impact on tourism, and obviously PSU is in the south of Thailand, which is a particular tourism destination, particularly for travellers from Europe and North America. GDP growth is expected to be minus 7.5% in Thailand. There's been a decline in exports from the country, so products that you make. And 8.3 million people are unemployed, and many of those individuals have lost their capacity to be able to earn paid employment, and therefore may need to be retrained for work in other sectors. Progress with vaccination is relatively slow in Thailand. You've so far vaccinated about 1.1% of the population. The good news is you've recently been approved by AstraZeneca to start vaccine manufacture within the country. So you should see that increasing quite substantially. But remember, we need to remember that Thailand is quite a large landmass with lots of rural areas, and much more difficult to be able to vaccinate people in countries like that compared to small countries like the UK, for example. And you've had a series of lockdowns, national lockdowns and local lockdowns. So that's the impact of the pandemic on the economy. So in the medium term, and we're talking about probably the rest of 2021 and possibly some of 2022, you're likely to have further pandemic waves, which will be associated with control measures. Whether you go back into full lockdown is debatable, but we've seen what is possible in India, for example, in relation to the COVID-19, and when you don't have a large proportion of the population vaccinated. You will be required in lockdowns to rapidly move to online teaching, which you have done previously, I'm very sure. We call that in higher education the pivot. So the pivot to online learning. And there is likely to be a further economic impact, a further loss of tourism income. The UK next week will announce which countries people can go on holiday freely to. They're going to be called green countries, and they have to have at least 50% of the population vaccinated before you can become a green country. So it's unlikely that you will get tourists from Europe and certainly not from the UK until you have managed to vaccinate a greater percentage of the population. There is a need for economic stimulus and protection of vulnerable population who are unemployed. And I think universities are going to be asked to support some of that retraining. So that's what I'm going to look at in the first part of the presentation, and then move into online teaching to look at that in greater detail. So Thailand, in common with lots of other countries around the globe, have provided a number of economic stimuluses to the economy. So you've had a 3-phase stimulus package in 2020, totaling more than $58 billion. which has resulted in some economic recovery. And certainly in locations like Bangkok, for example, there will be a number of people who are managing to save quite a lot of money. This is very, very common across the world. Billions of dollars, billions of pounds are being saved by people who are relatively affluent. And when the restrictions are eased, they will have the capacity to spend, and that will provide its own stimulus. The thing we need to be really careful of course, is inflation, because if people go spending a lot of money, then that will drive up inflation. Ongoing support for tourism is going to be likely to have to continue, and economic recovery is likely to be slow if infection rates rise, because we will need to go into further lockdowns. So one of the things lots of countries are thinking about is where to invest, where to invest the money from the economic support package that they're putting into society. Now, in most countries around the world, following the Paris Accord, most countries have made a commitment to climate action to prevent greenhouse gas emissions. And Thailand has a plan, which is the Climate Change Master Plan, working towards almost net zero by 2050. And in that plan, you plan to look at different methods of power generation, moving away from coal and fossil fuels and towards nuclear, potentially, and renewables, which account for about 6% of current power generation in Thailand. And so that might be one of the places to invest in the future. Now, universities are at the forefront of research into sustainable power, and therefore the universities will play a major part in relation to that. I'm preparing people to produce solar energy farms like are on the picture there, or wind farms, etc. And to basically address two issues at the same.
Okay, right. We seem to have a little bit of the problem with the technical problem. The technicians are going to fix this problem as soon as possible. So far, let's recap what we have for today. This is the lecture entitled "Where Do We Go From Here?" given by Professor John Answorth, and he received a bachelor degree in nursing in Northumbria University and also a PhD in nursing as well. So let's recap a little bit. So he said that there will be a degree of the infection all around the world. Then this is relating to COVID-19 and it's still similar to influenza. So it will take a while until people around the world get vaccinated. It could be 2 to 3 years, right? So the virus will also mutate. So as to escape the vaccine, so this has to be still monitored, and this has affected the economy also all around the world, not only in Thailand. ในการนี้ขออนุญาตพูดเป็นภาษาไทยนะครับเพื่อเป็นการสรุปให้กับผู้ที่เข้าชมอีกครั้งนะครับวันนี้นะครับเรามีการบรรยายพิเศษโดย Professor John Answorth นะครับจากมหาวิทยาลัย Northumbria นะครับซึ่งอาจารย์จอห์น อันเฟิร์ตเนี่ยเขาก็ได้อธิบายไว้เลยว่าในเรื่องของโคโรนาไวรัสนะครับก็ยังคงมีการติดเชื้ออยู่ทั่วโลกครับแล้วการที่จะสร้างภูมิคุ้มกันโดยการฉีดวัคซีนได้เนี่ยอาจจะต้องใช้เวลาถึง 2-3 ปีด้วยกันนะครับนอกจากนี้ไวรัสเนี่ยยังมีโอกาสที่จะเกิดการกลายพันธุ์ทำให้เกิดการหลีกเลี่ยงของการยับยั้งวัคซีนได้นะครับผลของโคโรนาไวรัสเนี่ยก็ยังคงส่งผลกระทบต่อเศรษฐกิจทั่วโลกนะครับไม่ได้เฉพาะที่ประเทศไทยอย่างเดียวซึ่งอันนี้ต้องใช้เวลาในการแก้ปัญหาต่อไปครับนอกจากนี้มาดูเรื่องของ โปรแกรมสำหรับวันนี้นะครับอาจารย์นกวันนี้โปรแกรมของเรา
ค่ะ
มีอะไรบ้างครับ
โอเคเลยค่ะ หลังจาก9 นาฬิกา 45 นาทีนะคะ ซึ่งจะจบการบรรยายพิเศษนะคะ จะเข้าสู่ช่วงที่ทุกคนรอคอยนะคะ แล้วก็รอลุ้นและยังอยากให้อยู่ลุ้นกับเราต่อไปนะคะ คือการประกาศผลการประกวดผลงานนะคะ ซึ่งจะมีทั้งในรูปแบบการบรรยายแล้วก็ในรูปแบบโปสเตอร์นะคะ จริงๆมีจากหลายห้องเลยนะคะ จากหลาย
ใช่ครับ
สาขาเลยนะคะอาจารย์ไอซ์
ห้องที่เราประกาศผลงานนะครับเรามีอยู่ทั้งหมด 8 ห้องด้วยกันนะครับ โดยที่ในการประกาศผลงานการนำเสนอยอดเยี่ยมนะครับ เราจะคัดผลงานที่ยอดเยี่ยมของแต่ละห้องนะครับ ซึ่งมีอยู่ทั้งหมด 8 ห้อง แล้วต้องขอบอกเลยตรงนี้นะครับว่าปีนี้พิเศษกว่าปีอื่นๆเนื่องจากว่ามีอยู่ห้องหนึ่งมีผู้ได้รับรางวัลถึง 2 คนครับเนื่องจากว่ามีคะแนนสูงสุดเท่ากันเลย ทางทีมงานก็เลยตัดสินใจโอเคให้ผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลไปทั้งคู่เลยนะครับโอเค
และอยากเรียนให้ท่านผู้ฟังทราบว่านะคะ เรามีการถ่ายทอดผ่านทาง Facebook Page ของ PSU Education Conference แล้วก็ Facebook Page ของ PSU Connect รวมถึง YouTube Channel ของ PSU Connect ด้วยนะคะ ดังนั้นความผิดพลาดทางเทคนิคหรือว่าช่วงเวลาที่ติดขัดนะคะ ท่านผู้ฟังหรือท่านผู้ที่เข้าร่วมงานประชุมวิชาการในครั้งนี้เนี่ยสามารถกลับไปติดตามดู เพื่อที่จะได้ไม่พลาดในช่วงเวลาพิเศษ หรือในช่วงเวลาที่สำคัญที่เราพยายามนำเสนอในตอนนี้นะคะ
และที่อาจารย์จรได้กล่าวไว้ตั้งแต่ตอนแรกนะครับว่าการนำเสนอครั้งนี้ก็จะทำผ่านแพลตฟอร์มที่ชื่อว่า seating.com ด้วยนะครับท่านผู้ชมสามารถเข้าไปได้ที่ www.seating ครับ zeetings.com ครับแล้วก็ /jointyspace ครับโอเคครับและในขณะนี้นะครับสัญญาณเริ่มกลับมาแล้วนะครับเราขอส่งต่อสัญญาณนี้ให้กับอาจารย์จรอีกครั้งนะครับ
Hi welcome back Professor
Hello, apologies. It's pretty high.
no problem
It's okay Professor
When you're doing a talk about teaching online, that the internet Wi-Fi collapses.
alright please go on
My apologies, everybody. But I think we're fine to continue now. So thank you very much for bearing with me. Hopefully we'll be fine from now. Okay, so I was talking about potential investment into renewable energies, I think, when you lost me. And so we're going to go on to look at demographics and workforce. So another major area in Thailand where you might wish to invest and universities could support that investment is in developing the workforce to manage changes in demographics in Thailand. So you've obviously got a rising population of older people, and they will require increased health and social care, particularly in the rural areas. And this is often quite difficult to provide a workforce for primary care. It's all from medicine, nursing, and public health, for example. And you also have quite a high rate of vacancies within nursing, and that is common. So nursing is projected to have 9 million vacancies across the world by 2025. So lots of countries are in a very, very similar position. So that potentially could be an area for further future investment. I mentioned at the beginning when we were talking about how many people you've managed to vaccinate so far, that vaccine manufacture has the potential to provide a new economic stream to contribute to gross domestic product in Thailand. President Biden just this week announced a waiver of the patents which prevent vaccine manufacture by companies that aren't necessarily approved by the originating developer of the vaccine. And so there are potentials to create manufacturing hubs in more countries, and this could assist with vaccine rollout. And there'll be less reliance on 2 to 3 major manufacturing nations. We've seen problems in relation to this, for example, in India. The Serum Institute in India do roughly about 70% of the world's vaccines, not only for COVID-19, but for all diseases. And obviously the pandemic is hitting India very hard, and that will affect the workforce and their ability to be able to manufacture vaccines. So Siam Bioscience in Thailand have just been approved in the last few weeks to start manufacturing the AstraZeneca vaccine. And that supply will be for Southeast Asia initially, but there is the potential for manufacture of Pfizer, Moderna vaccines, etc. So that's an area in biosciences which I think the government could invest in. At the same time, the university will be well aware of what is regarded as the fourth industrial revolution. And Thailand has fairly recently led the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in relation to looking at artificial intelligence and the use of technology. So the fourth industrial revolution is looking at autonomous systems, machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. So over the period of time, as you've seen, we've had mechanization with steam, which was the first industrial revolution, mass production and assembly, which was the second industrial revolution, and then automated systems and IT systems and robotics, particularly in things like car manufacture and in manufacture, general food manufacture and processing, for example. And now we're moving on to a technology-driven revolution. And Thailand is well placed, given digital literacy levels amongst the growing number of people who are relatively economically affluent and regarded as the middle class in Thailand. And 7% of your gross domestic product and growing is derived from technology and artificial intelligence. So I think that presents opportunities as well if you're making an economic stimulus package. So what would the role of higher education be? So I think there'll be an increasing number of people who are going to be doing study. Many of these people will be second career individuals, so people who have had a previous career in an area where there has been retraction and less jobs. Many of them will want to study part-time, for example, rather than full-time. There is a need to develop a workforce for health and social care, and I'm aware from my esteemed colleagues who I've worked with previously that PSU provides a number of people into that workforce through medicine and nursing and other disciplines at the university. Knowledge exchange will become really important, so supporting startups, new sectors, looking at renewable energy. Obviously, beyond PSU, there are a number of universities in Thailand who would be able to contribute across the country. So I don't think you need to diversify your specialisms, but I'm also aware that you do quite a lot of research in relation to technology and artificial intelligence, etc. And so I think that is an area that the university will be called on to help develop. There are constraints to all of this. This would need some funding, so some of that economic stimulus package would need to come to universities. There are issues in relation to the estate. So if you're required to take more students, do you just carry on building? Most universities have constraints on space, particularly things like lecture theatres. And you find that universities can't really build bigger and bigger lecture theatres all the time. And then there are constraints in relation to staff. So shortages in particular subject areas where you can't get academically well qualified staff and good research staff. And then access issues. So people who will continue to need to work but are retraining for another second career or another profession, they will want to access remotely or part-time or do blended or distance learning kind of provision. So let's turn now to look at what does all this mean for learning and teaching. And this is my area of expertise. So let's talk about teaching online. What have we learned so far in relation to teaching online during the pandemic? Well, we've learned that we can rapidly shift to deliver online teaching almost overnight during lockdowns, etc. So we can move from classroom-based teaching to an announcement that the country's going into lockdown, and then we can move our classes onto digital platforms. The focus is often on teaching. And so what we've created, because of the need to do it quickly, is lecture online, which is very similar to this session, but I'm going to hopefully try and mix things up for you shortly. And synchronous activity is by far the most common kind of activity. So that is where the student's live and the teacher's live. And it's not very interactive. And often teaching wasn't very interactive in the classroom anyway. So we did do a lot of lecture where the students sit and the lecturer talks, perhaps to some slides, to PowerPoint, etc. And the students are inactive recipients of knowledge, of information. And so if it wasn't very interactive in the classroom, it's not likely to be very interactive online if you've just shifted it from one place to the next. Okay, so the big question in higher education is, if the pandemic ended tomorrow, we can hope, but I don't think that's going to happen, would academics revert to their previous methods? I can tell you that my gut feeling is they would. That academics can't wait to get back into a classroom, that they actually dislike greatly teaching online. And making online teaching stick will require investment in development of staff and support, and showing people that teaching online can be as good as, if not better than, other established methods. Okay. So where are we heading? Well, I think what we're heading towards is a return to campus-based teaching and some teaching online. But unlike a blended system where students on the same course would do that, I think we're heading for what's called a hybrid approach. And a hybrid approach means that some people will be in class, possibly socially distanced, and some people will be learning remotely from home in the same lesson. So your lesson would be broadcast. And that certainly for advanced HE, who I do work for and have done work for in Thailand, is often the approach. So we have done work in, for example, in Vietnam, where everybody was in a hotel. We were in the UK teaching online, but then there were satellite people at different parts and different cities across Vietnam. And campus learning, I think, will become increasingly used for very specialist teaching facilities. So if it's engineering or research laboratories or clinical skills centers, that's essentially what you will go onto campus for. If people do nothing else, if they moved lectures to a hybrid, it would free up time, capacity, and resources on campus. In my own university, we have an intake of just short of 1,000 nursing students. And our largest lecture theatre is 210. So it doesn't take a mathematician to work out that I have to do the same lecture 5 times in a week if I'm going to deliver the lecture. That's a big burden on staff, but I could actually teach all 1,000 people online in that lecture at the same time. So massive saving in staff time, and we also don't need to really build more and more expensive facilities. So the benefits are that you can deliver online lectures to hundreds of people without a physical space. So in the States benefit, there is flexibility. So students don't need to travel, staff don't need to travel either. Reach, you can go beyond the traditional campus boundaries into rural areas and potentially into other countries with a blended kind of approach. And lots of this is transferable. So what I'm going to talk about improving online teaching is going to be applicable to teaching in the classroom as well as online. So what's the problem with teaching online? Well, this will be a familiar sight to lots of you. So what we've got in this little screen capture is the teacher, who's the only person who's got the camera on, and he's talking to a series of just names and blacked out screens. And you don't know whether the students are there. You don't know whether they're paying attention, and that becomes a problem. The issue is that the problem
try to do
larger. So if you just bear with me 1 second. I'm just going.
We'll try.
I'm going to show you this video. This is an online history class, which was taught, and the lecturer kindly made this available on Zoom. This was during the pivot to online learning, and this is designed, I'm not going to show you the whole thing, so the people who are in the control room for the conference don't need to panic that this is 23 minutes long, because it doesn't. But I just want to show you how poor online teaching can be. So if we just watch a little short excerpt of this.
Try to do just like a half an hour meeting today, and we'll try another half an hour on Friday, and we'll see how it works. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrate the PowerPoints, so that when you download the PowerPoints on Canvas, basically it'll be just me kind of walking through those PowerPoints narrated too. Okay. So these sessions we'll just go over kind of, if you got questions, and just the main things a couple times a week. All right. But it's not like we're all.
Okay, so we'll just stop it there. It goes on for a long period of time, but the key points I'm trying to convey with that short video is this is quite an uninspiring session. The teacher's already setting the context, which is, let's give it a try, it probably won't work. The students already look relatively bored and disinterested in the topic area. You can see that there's a variety of responses. We've got people eating, some of them look quite bemused, but it's quite disruptive. At least most of them have got their cameras on, and it is basically just lifting the lecture and using Zoom to actually teach it. So what I want to do is just show you a very, very short little part of this video, and I can make available the full details of the video. But this is a gentleman called Joe Milne, and he is a language teacher. So he teaches English language. And in the video I'm about to show you, is teaching a student who you can't see because he hasn't shared that detail to maintain confidentiality. But Joe shows what great online teaching looks like. So have a little watch of this one.
So Jeremy, what have you been doing today?
Went to work.
Yeah, as always.
Weekday, right?
Yeah. So
as always.
How are your Mondays in comparison to the rest of the week?
What? Sorry.
So how are your Mondays in comparison to the rest of the week? Are Mondays usually the busiest day of the week or the most relaxed day of the week?
Well, since it's the beginning of the weekday, so not that busy. Usually it will be until Wednesday.
Okay, so the important thing to remember in relation to this video is Joe is teaching English. And so even just this icebreaker part of the session is designed to assess the student's level and ability in using English. And he goes on in the video to use the whiteboard to write sentences which the student says, and then to correct where he stumbled over certain English words, and then they rehearse the words. Very interactive. The music in the background doesn't form part of the session, and I'm not sure why Joe added that to the video on his YouTube channel, but that could be regarded as quite disruptive. But this is quite an interactive kind of session. Lots of eye contact from Joe, very friendly, breaks the ice with the student. So this is a good online kind of class. Okay. Now, Joe has a YouTube channel and makes a number of videos around teaching online. We're just going to watch a little bit of one of them next.
Hey everyone, Joe here. I'm super tired today. There's loads of noise outside, but I just felt really inspired to make this video for you. So, got all my stuff together, and here we go. I'll be straight up with you all. We can be pretty hard on ourselves on how we started out doing something. And we always look back and criticize ourselves on things we could have done better. but it's all part of the learning process, so don't worry if you make some of these mistakes. What mistakes? Today, I'm going to take you through 3 huge mistakes I made when I started teaching online. When I first started teaching online, I didn't really understand the importance of eye contact. Wait, back up. When I first started teaching online, I didn't realize the importance of eye contact. I focused too much on the screen, didn't know how to properly touch type, and just didn't think to look into the camera much. Why? Because it didn't feel right. It feels unnatural to look into a lens while you're talking. Like right now, I'm doing it right now. It doesn't feel totally normal. It feels so much more natural to look at someone or at their name or even at yourself when you're talking to them. But what does that look like to the student or the client? When you look into the camera, they really feel like you're looking at them and paying attention to them. So I actually recorded a few of my full-length classes a few years ago, and that was the first thing I noticed, not looking into the camera. You don't really realize how bad it looks not looking into the camera frequently until you actually experience it. If you don't believe me, try recording one of your own classes using some screen capture software or recording software like OBS Studio, and watch it back. On top of not actually looking into the camera as much as you thought, you probably will realize that you don't actually smile as much as you thought you did either. That's something that I also had to change. Okay, this is a rough one, and it might not be something you want to hear, but it's all about video quality and lighting. When I look back at my first year of teaching English online, and when I'm unfortunate enough to stumble across an old screenshot or video of what my video quality and lighting actually looked like, I feel ashamed. I shouldn't feel ashamed, but I do. I relied on natural light seeping through a window, or just the single light fixture above my head, when it can be so much better than that. It wasn't actually until fairly recently that I got my act together and got some little bits. I sorted myself out with a setup that looks insanely professional in comparison to what I used to have.
Okay, folks, we are going to leave it there, but you can get details of Joe Milne's YouTube channel if you wanted to watch any of the videos. He's got some great videos about online teaching, but some really important points there, things that I've learned, things I'm still working on. So the smiling I'm still not particularly good at, sadly, certainly not at 3 o'clock in the morning. But I am much better at looking at the camera, which actually means that I can't actually watch what's happening on Zoom. Because if you look down at the individuals who might be asking questions, etc., you're not looking at the camera directly. So it does make certain things like, monitoring the chat panel very difficult. I have improved my lighting, so if I turn that off, you will see I'm suddenly quite dark. I have the benefit of having the green screen behind me with the conference logo on. But if I turn the light back on, you'll see that I suddenly get much brighter. So these are important aspects, because teaching's about rapport. Teaching's about connection with people. And therefore, looking down or reading from a PowerPoint on a different screen, I've got dual screen here, which is why I sometimes turn to the side if I need to be able to check any of the controls, etc. So all of that's really quite important stuff in relation to teaching online. The next thing I wanted to look at is active learning. And active learning involves teaching methods and strategies that involve student participation and engagement with the material in a very meaningful way during the class. So this means that students are no longer passive recipients of knowledge, that you are interacting with them, that they're getting involved. Now, in a lecture theatre, you could say, well, the active learning is asking questions and getting answers. That's not really very active. And it only really involves the students who want to answer, or the student who you've asked whether they know the answer. So we need to look at the transformation of learning. And ideally what you should do is build a teaching session which looks something like this. So this is from Harvard and from their Center in Relation to Collaborative Learning. And you can see that we've got a 10 to 12 minute lecture followed by a 3 to 4 minute activity, a 10 to 12 minute lecture, 3 to 4 minute activity, etc., etc. So building activities into what would be a lecture, whether that's discussed with your partner, answer some quiz questions, whatever it is, and we can use technology in order to be able to achieve that kind of active learning. Why do we need active learning? Well, at the beginning of the session, and I know that when my Wi-Fi failed, that your colleagues reiterated that if you join www.zeetings.com/JontySpace, you'll be able to take part now in these multiple choice questions. So students are most attentive during a lecture. Is it after the first 10 minutes, from the start until 10 minutes in, after the first 20 minutes, or from the beginning until 20 minutes in? So if you are logged into Zeetings, you should be able to select an answer and we should be able to see live, hopefully, some of the responses. He said, hopefully. Is there anybody out there? Oh, there we go. Good, there are some people out there. So this is the other benefit of using this kind of technology, is that you can identify that the students are paying attention, that they are there, even if they don't have their cameras on. So we're just going to give you a little while longer to provide some answers. So this is all changing in real time. Now, the benefit of Zeetings as a platform is I can mix my PowerPoint slides, YouTube videos, and quiz questions all in the same platform. And this means that I don't have to keep swapping in and out in the middle of a Zoom presentation. Zeetings is free for educational use for up to 500 participants. And it's a really great platform if you're looking for something to help with online learning delivery. Okay, so students are most attentive during a lecture from the start until 10 minutes in. Now, the issue is in most lectures, we either say, well, let's wait for the students who are slightly delayed, possibly from a previous class or traveling in, or we make announcements. So we waste the most attentive point in the lecture because the most attentive point is in the first 10 minutes. The optimal length of a lecture in terms of attention, is it 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 20 minutes, or 60 minutes? And if you've been paying attention so far, I've probably given you the answer. So we'll just give you a few more seconds. Okay, we seem to be settling and, Okay, so the answer is C, it's 20 minutes, okay? The optimal length of a lecture is 20 minutes. And most of us do a lot longer than that. Now, one of the problems with the live platform is once you've given, and this usually causes much hilarity, is once you've given out the right answer, the students can change their selection. And then you usually find that 100% of people have got the answer right. And so that creates a bit more fun in class, to be fair. The average attention span of an adult, is it 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes, or 60 minutes? How long can we really pay attention for before we've stopped taking in information? So lots of different responses on this one. Okay, so the average attention span of an adult is 15 minutes. So even a 20-minute lecture is starting to really push it, okay? But any longer than that, and people are starting to not pay attention and not take in the information. starting to somewhat drift off. Since the year 2000, the average attention span has dropped. So this is a phenomena of young people who are used to a digital age where things are very short. They use Line to communicate, they use Facebook, etc. So is it 60 seconds, 90 seconds, 5 seconds, or 12 seconds? How much has it dropped by in 20 years? Okay, just let that settle. So the good news is that it's only dropped by 12 seconds. But if you think that if every new cohort of students, so when they get to the age of 18 and they join university, has dropped by another 12 seconds, we will get an average attention span of probably about 10 minutes during our teaching careers, which is a bit of a worry. And then using images in a lecture, how much does that improve retention? So that's the retaining the information you're presenting. Is it by 20%, 60%, 40%, or 10%? And I have to tell you, the people who've done the certificate program with advanced HE should be getting 100% on this quiz, because we have done this quiz before. So I'd be very shocked if you are getting the answers wrong. No pressure, guys. Okay, well, 60% of you have got that, 65% of you have got that right, so it's 60%. So a 60% improvement in retaining the information that was presented just by using an image. And it can be any image, it doesn't even have to be related to the topic, okay? And so at the beginning of my presentation, you will have seen that we made extensive use of images. In order to be able to make the slides interesting and more engaging during the presentation. The second most attentive period in a lecture is at the last 10 minutes, between 10 minutes and 20 minutes from the start, the last 20 minutes or the last 5 minutes. When's the second most attentive period in a lecture? Okay, so starting to settle down a little bit. It's actually the last 10 minutes, okay? Now, you can steal 2 very attentive periods. The one when you told them it should end, and the one when they think it's ending. So when you start to sum up and you get close to being at the end of the session, students will become more animated and more attentive. But you could also have the one if you then went on to do further material, which would have been the scheduled end of the session. Okay. So here's some interesting facts based on what we now know about attention and students' ability to pay attention and the ideal attention span. So the average length of a lecture in higher education is 100.6 minutes. It's that long. So just short of 2 hours in length. And the average YouTube video is about 11.7 minutes, okay? So students, young people will be used to watching videos and might be on YouTube or on other social media platforms. And the average length of those is around about 10 minutes. The average length of a TED Talk, obviously designed to promote good education, is around 18 minutes. So this should be the dawn of the micro lecture. And if you remember back to the slide where I showed you Harvard, which was 15 to 20 minutes lecture, 2 to 3 minute activity, 15 to 20 minute lecture. So that's what essentially you're looking for. So break your lecture down into bite-sized chunks. 20 minutes, change activity, 20 minutes, okay? Okay, so active learning online, and this is how you can achieve active learning online. So breakout rooms, in Zoom, for example, you can put students into breakout rooms to work together on an activity. You can use adjunct technology. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. So Zeating's the platform I'm using is an adjunct technology. So we're presenting online via Zoom, but we're using other technology alongside that. You can have interactivity in the session. And we're using Zeating's for that with online quizzes and polling. And we need to change activity every 10 to 20 minutes, okay? Think about how it works face-to-face in a classroom, because this is how you should teach it face-to-face, and then find the tech to support it. So the important thing is pedagogy first, okay? Not technology first, pedagogy first. What's a good way of teaching, then find the technology, okay? So different adjuncts, I use and make extensive use of Google Jamboard, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'll need to look away from the camera, is I'm going to give you access to one of my Google Jamboards if you want to have a little play, okay? So I just need to put this into the chat panel. So please go in and have a look. And feel free, this is an old Jamboard from a session I did with some nursing students. And in that Jamboard, you can move around the post-it notes, create new post-it notes, feel free to write in Thai, etc. So you can see Google Jamboards is free, and it gives you an interactive whiteboard where you can create post-it notes, where you can draw, where people can work in groups. You can have up to 20 whiteboards in the same session. So even if you've got big groups of students, they can work on Google Jamboards during their breakout rooms and work on an activity. So the activity that you'll see in my Google Jamboard there is an activity related to an outbreak of infection within a long-term care home. And the students are asked to prioritize what things need to happen first, immediately during the first day, and then subsequently from that, okay? Padlet is very similar. Again, you can have up to 3 Padlet boards. Then this can be used for post-it notes, pictures, messages. Students can upload video, that kind of thing. They can upload video messages. Quite good if you've got a brand new class and you want people to introduce themselves. Zeating's is free, as we've said, for up to 500 users. And then online polling, Mentimeter is a fairly new one. Poll Everywhere is more established. Lots of these companies have started to charge and are making huge profits as a result of the pandemic. Okay, this is just published yesterday. This is from Advance HE's latest report on online learning. This is the top 10 tips for online learning. First one is good online teaching is based on good pedagogy, not technology. Okay, so pedagogy first. You need to consider digital equity. So does everybody have access to a device? Is it of a similar quality? Have they all got similar broadband Wi-Fi kind of capacity in order to be able to study? You need to have variation in online learning. It's no good using Google Jamboard every time you do a session with every group, because they'll quickly get very bored of that. Set out in the learning management system, your LMS, your weekly tasks and expectations. So the kind of things you want the student to do before the session and during the live sessions. Use asynchronous as well as live sessions. So where students are asked to do activities outside of the normal teaching sessions. Keep videos and podcasts short. So remember, average YouTube video, 11.7 minutes. And that's essentially what you're looking for, 10-minute little micro lecture kind of video recording. Make effective use of social presence. So this is about you being involved in discussion boards. If you give the students a discussion board where they have to post, you should go into the discussion board and comment on what people are posting so that they feel a bit of pressure to take part in the activity that you've set them asynchronously. Build-in feedback. Again, you can do that via online means through the learning management system. Regular and purposeful deadlines. Okay, so again, that's like number 4, setting out the weekly tasks and expectations. And use synchronous approaches to discussion boards, particularly when students start out and they might be a bit reluctant to post their ideas up. Do them in a live session, because that will encourage students to then get used to the technology and the platforms. This is from the work of Diane Laurillard. This is learning tanks. So this is in terms of designing learning. So Diane Laurillard produced these 6 learning types. They are acquisition, discussion, investigation, collaboration, practice, and production. And we tend to concentrate in the world of acquisition. So this is what learners are doing when they're listening to a lecture, listening to a podcast, reading from a book. This is the giving of knowledge by whatever method. Discussion is where learners articulate their ideas and questions and challenges and respond to what they've learned. Investigation, the students go away and find information for themselves. So techniques like problem-based learning or inquiry-based learning involve investigation. Collaboration would be working in groups in breakout rooms, for example, online, where they would generate something. That also involves production. So learners would produce an artifact. So a Google Jamboard is in fact an artifact. So the good thing about Google Jamboard is you can go into the Jamboard, you can see what the students are doing in their breakout rooms. You can give them, I usually use a different color Post-it note to give them pointers and suggestions. And then practice enables the learner to adapt their actions and through feedback, okay? So that's Laurillard's learning type. It's worth looking at when you're teaching online, how many of these are you hitting? Don't expect to hit all 6 in every session, but within a course or a unit or a module or whatever it's called, you would expect to have a range of different approaches, not just acquisition of knowledge. Okay, almost there, folks. So in summary, good online learning is like good face-to-face learning. It's interesting, interactive, fun, and challenging. It should aim to mix activities lasting no more than 20 minutes. It needs to be planned and needs to provide opportunities beyond acquisition. And it uses technology to mirror what would happen face-to-face. So think about, how would I do this if the students were in the room? How am I going to do it online? And in a new hybrid world, you could be doing both. So you could be broadcasting to students in rural communities who are doing the same course, and you could also be teaching a group of students in the room. Okay, and irrespective of whether online learning becomes the norm or not, the same pedagogical approaches should apply to good teaching within a classroom setting. Okay, we're going to move. I'm finished there. We're slightly over. Apologies for that. We're going to move to questions, and just to let you know, although it's very dark outside, this is just outside my house, just there, is this windmill. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Professor Unsworth, for such an inspiring lecture. I actually stay focused longer than 20 minutes.
Well, so I am sure that the participants who are now watching from home will be greatly inspired by your talk. Now, Professor, we seem to have some questions coming from the audience. So the first question is, how can teachers improve their students' thinking skills in the online classroom?
Okay, so thank you very much for that question. It's really important to have to work on this. If you look at Diane Laurillard's learning types, that's the way of developing the students' thinking skills. So by getting them to do activities which involve investigation, collaboration, and production. Okay, so the students have to go away and work independently and with feedback. And if you're online, getting the students to actually post their initial thoughts and thinking and to work out their reasoning and the way that they construct their arguments, via Google Jamboard, you will be able to intervene if you feel that they're not developing at the level of critical thinking and analysis that you want them to actually develop. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you. And now we have the second question, and actually my favorite question. How could we enhance global citizenship skills for students in a post-pandemic world?
Okay, so very interesting. So I think this is where we start to get into thinking about how we could replicate what existed before in terms of exchange visits, opportunities to study overseas, to find out about other countries, and to develop competence in relation to being a global citizen. And so I think what we need to do is we need to look at things like virtual reality. Now, you can get relatively inexpensive virtual reality equipment. So Google Cardboard, for example, is a cardboard set of goggles where you can use your mobile telephone and pop it into the front of the glasses and do a virtual tour of a destination or an art gallery, or learning about ancient Greek history or Roman history. Those kind of things will allow you to be able to experience other cultures. And so I think that we need to try and replicate that, because people aren't allowed to travel. So even our students in the classroom aren't going to have that experience for some time until a large proportion of the population are vaccinated globally.
Thank you. I actually do have those cardboards. They're really good.
Yeah, and very inexpensive. So we in the previous university I worked at, we bought them for the whole student group, and it was relatively cheap.
Right.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Answorth. Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so we do have lots of questions to the people who are watching us from home. So all the questions will be answered on the Facebook page of the PSU Education Conference.
Thank you again, Professor Answorth.
Thank you very much. I enjoy the rest of your session and the award ceremony. Congratulations to the award winners.
Thank you.
ค่ะสำหรับการบรรยายภาคพิเศษในช่วงเช้าก็จบแต่เพียงเท่านี้นะคะและขอต้อนรับเข้าสู่ช่วงสุดท้ายของงานประชุมวิชาการ The 9th PSU Education Conference 2020 นะคะซึ่งคาดว่าเป็นช่วงที่หลายคนเฝ้ารอแล้วก็ลุ้นกันมาตลอดงานประชุมเลยนะคะนั่นก็คือการประกาศผลการประกวดผลงานค่ะ
สำหรับรางวัลในงานนี้นะครับมีอยู่ทั้งหมด9รางวัลด้วยกันครับโดยจะแบ่งเป็นรางวัลนำเสนอผลงานแบบบรรยายดีเด่นจำนวน8รางวัลนะครับโดยเราจะคัดเลือกเฉพาะผลงานดีเด่นของแต่ละห้องครับซึ่งมีอยู่ทั้งหมด8ห้องด้วยกันแล้วขอบอกก่อนเลยว่าปีนี้พิเศษกว่าปีอื่นครับเนื่องจากว่ามีอยู่1ห้องที่มีผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลถึง2คนด้วยกันนอกจากนี้นะครับก็ยังมีรางวัลชนะเลิศการนำเสนอผลงานภาคโปสเตอร์ครับจำนวน1รางวัลนะครับโดยตัดสินจากการโหวตของผู้เข้าชมครับโดยรายชื่อผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลนะครับจะปรากฏอยู่บนเว็บไซต์ www.psu.conference.org ด้วยครับในส่วนของรางวัลนั้นนะครับทางผู้จัดงานจะทำการจัดส่งให้กับผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลทุกท่านในภายหลังนะครับ
เรามาเริ่มกันที่ผลงานดีเด่นในภาคบรรยายก่อนนะคะจากสาขาการสอนภาษาอังกฤษนะคะนายประกรณ์คงจินดามณีจากมหาวิทยาลัยราชภัฏสงขลานะคะในหัวข้อเรื่อง Creating and Designing a Website Providing Supplementary English Grammar Content Focusing on Tenses in the Period of COVID-19 Pandemics for the First Year English Majors Faculty of Humanities and Social Science สงขลาราชภัฏ University ค่ะ
รางวัลถัดไปนะครับจากห้องด้านการบริหารธุรกิจและการเงินครับผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลก็คือนางพจนาถ ฤทธิเดชครับจากมหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์ครับมาในหัวข้อเรื่อง The Design of the Tax Accounting Course Learning Management in Preparation for Accounting Students Field Experience Training
ค่ะและผลงานดีเด่นด้านเทคนิคการสอนในห้องแรกนะคะเป็นของผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.บุญฤทธิ์ชูประดิษฐ์จากมหาวิทยาลัยธรรมศาสตร์ค่ะในหัวข้อ The Influence of the Number of Devices Used in Online Teaching on Academic Achievement A Case Study on a Statistical Course
และสำหรับห้องเทคนิคการสอนห้องที่2นะครับห้องนี้มีผู้ได้รับรางวัล2ท่านครับคนแรกก็คือนางสาวณัฐมนต์ราชเสนครับจากมหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์ครับชื่อเรื่องคือ Essence on Mindset and Futuristic Thinking of Students of Prince of Songkhla University Pattani Campus และผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลคนที่2ก็คือนางสาวสุทธิพรตรึกตรองครับจากมหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์เช่นเดียวกันครับมาในหัวข้อเรื่อง Experiential Learning Under the COVID-19 Situation
ค่ะผลงานดีเด่นด้านเทคนิคการสอนและการวัดประเมินผลนะคะเป็นของผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ตรีชาติเลาแก้วหนูนะคะจากมหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์นะคะในหัวข้อ Once upon a time I was disabled Transformative Learning
และสำหรับผลงานดีเด่นในห้องการสอนต่ำกว่าระดับอุดมศึกษานะครับผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลคือผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร.ชัยยศชาวระนองครับจากมหาวิทยาลัยสวนดุสิตนครนายกครับชื่อเรื่องคือ A Review of the Validity of Data Regarding the Quality of Work-Life Measurement Model for Early Childhood Teachers Analyzed by the Partial Least Squares and Covariance Analysis Method
ผลงานดีเด่นด้านเทคโนโลยีนะคะเป็นของดร.ฮามิดะมูซานะคะในหัวข้อ The ability to reflect chemical phenomena models at macro, micro, and symbolic level of fourth year chemistry student teachers
และผลงานนำเสนอดีเด่นจากห้องเทคโนโลยีและวิทยาศาสตร์สุขภาพนะครับผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลได้แก่ศาสตราจารย์ดร.พลพันธ์บุญมากครับจากมหาวิทยาลัยขอนแก่นครับมาในชื่อเรื่อง Basic Life Support for Healthcare Provider Training with Blended Classroom During the COVID-19 Pandemic
ค่ะและสุดท้ายนะคะจะเป็นผลงานดีเด่นในรูปแบบโปสเตอร์นะคะและจะมีเพียงแค่รางวัลเดียวด้วยนะคะรางวัลนี้เป็นของดร.ทานตะวันสร้อยมาลามหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์นะคะในผลงานเรื่อง Effects of Team-Based Learning on Academic Achievement and Satisfaction of Third Year Students in Microbial Physiology Course
และนี่คือทั้งหมดของการประกาศรางวัลนะครับขอแสดงความยินดีกับผู้ที่ได้รับรางวัลอีกครั้งนะครับ
และในลำดับถัดไปจะเข้าสู่พิธีปิดของงานประชุมวิชาการในครั้งนี้ค่ะ
ในโอกาสนี้ขอเรียนเชิญรองศาสตราจารย์ดร.จุฑามาศสัตสุขรองอธิการบดีฝ่ายวิชาการมหาวิทยาลัยสงขลานครินทร์ขึ้นกล่าวปิดงานครับ
ท่านผู้บริหารวิทยากรและผู้เข้าร่วมประชุมทุกท่านจากการประชุมทั้ง2 วันที่ผ่านมาภายใต้หัวข้อหลัก A Better Change in Higher Education for Future Economy ในการประชุมวิชาการ The 9th PSU Education Conference ซึ่งเป็นการจัดประชุมในรูปแบบออนไลน์นั้นดิฉันเชื่อและมั่นใจว่าผู้เข้าร่วมประชุมทุกท่านจะได้รับความรู้ทั้งจากการปาฐกถาพิเศษการรับฟังการนำเสนอผลงานรวมทั้งการชมผลงานแบบโปสเตอร์ซึ่งจะเป็นประโยชน์ต่อการนำไปประยุกต์ใช้ต่อยอดขยายผลด้านการจัดการเรียนการสอนต่อไปดิฉันขอขอบพระคุณท่านวิทยากรทุกท่านที่ได้เสียสละเวลามาบรรยายถ่ายทอดประสบการณ์และให้ความรู้ขอขอบคุณผู้นำเสนอผลงานทุกท่านที่ได้นำเสนอและแลกเปลี่ยนเรียนรู้ระหว่างกันขอขอบคุณคณะกรรมการจัดประชุมทุกท่านที่ทำให้การประชุมครั้งนี้สำเร็จลุล่วงไปด้วยดีแม้ในสภาวะที่ยากลำบากในการจัดการที่ไม่เป็นปกตินี้และขอขอบคุณผู้เข้าร่วมประชุมทุกท่านที่ได้ร่วมรับฟังและแลกเปลี่ยนความรู้ซึ่งกันและกันอันสะท้อนถึงความสนใจและตั้งใจที่จะเรียนรู้ซึ่งจะส่งผลไปสู่การจัดการเรียนการสอนที่มีประสิทธิภาพยิ่งขึ้นต่อไปดิฉันขออาราธนาคุณพระศรีรัตนตรัยและสิ่งศักดิ์สิทธิ์ในสากลจงดลบันดาลให้ทุกท่านประสบแต่ความสุขความเจริญในหน้าที่การงานมีสุขภาพที่แข็งแรงห่างไกลจากโควิดบัดนี้ได้เวลาอันสมควรแล้วดิฉันขอปิดการประชุมวิชาการ The 9th PSU Education Conference A Better Change in Higher Education for Future Economy ขอขอบพระคุณค่ะพบกันใหม่ในการประชุมปีหน้านะคะ
ขอขอบพระคุณท่านรองศาสตราจารย์ดร.จุฑามาศสัตสุขด้วยนะคะ
และทั้งหมดนี้ก็คือกิจกรรมของงานประชุมวิชาการ PSU Education Conference ในปีนี้นะครับเราหวังเป็นอย่างยิ่งว่าจะได้กลับมาพบเจอกันใหม่ในงานประชุมวิชาการที่จะจัดขึ้นในปีหน้าครับ
สำหรับวันนี้สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ